one of the most positive and powerful things that you've done and that I've heard you speak about is like one of the big issues in the 70s and the 80s that you spoke about was that we couldn't lift one without putting down the other, right? It was like you have to choose white collar, blue collar. And I'll paraphrase here, but something I heard you say was we did need a good push for more kids to consider a 4-year path, but we were not content to make the case on its merits alone. We had to relegate trades, trade schools, community colleges, etc., to cautionary tales. And I think that that's really important to note. And I think that that's somewhat of the answer as to how we continue to progress and bring people into this trade. We don't need to bring people into the trades by putting down the white collar and the opportunity that being a professional presents. And I think that you made a very strong and powerful point to me that I had never really considered, that this has been going on since the 70s and the 80s and the PR campaigns, where it's like in order to make white collar or push for white collar, we had to put down blue collar. And I don't think that's the answer on the other side of it now that we're trying to build up the blue collar industry and attract people. Like it's not one or the other. It's bringing them together and understanding that there's different paths and they can work in unison. They don't have to be independent of each other.
Well, how do you even think about the color of collars in 2024? I mean, to the idea that a blue collar worker could be using AI
Mm-hmm.
to solve a problem ought to make the point right there. You know, the fact that the person we used to call a mechanic, now an auto technician, I suppose, is looking at the device underneath your hood, which no longer resembles an engine to me anyway. I used to be able to change my oil and maybe even do my own brakes. Today, forget it. That person is like a rocket scientist, some sort of a
Mm-hmm.
software engineer. So the color of collars, I think, has probably outlived its usefulness. The real issue in what you've brought up, Tyler, is the power of PR and the corrosive power of bad PR. PR, has a way of just getting relegated into, okay, well, it's just PR. Like, what are you really doing at MicroWorks? Why is it important to challenge the stigmas and the stereotypes and the myths and the misperceptions that keep people out of the trades? Well, because those things are unbelievably persuasive and deeply rooted. Like the number of look at the whole Varsity Blues drama from a few years ago. That all played out among very, very wealthy families whose parents were very, very, very keenly interested in making absolutely sure that their kids not were happy, but went a particular route. It was super important to them. And that desire was mirrored by the private schools from which some of them matriculated and the guidance counselors who pushed and nudged and shoved and discouraged and encouraged, various paths. It's such a our thumb has been on the scale for so long, and you're so right to point it out that there is nothing written in the stars that says a good and effective PR campaign designed to encourage more kids to become engineers, doctors, lawyers, you know, something funded by the Ivies, that nothing says that you have to pile on and say, and if you don't do it this way, you're going to wind up building houses or turning a wrench or some other fool thing, right? That's a choice. That was like a conscious choice. There's a song from an old musical. I think it's South Pacific called "Carefully Taught." You've got to be carefully taught certain things. That song is about racism and bigotry and so forth and so on. But you also have to be taught as a kid to look down your nose at the trades. You have to be coached. Right? I mean, this is all like the skills gap that we keep talking about. It's not a mystery, really. It's just a function of what we value. And when you look at the PR that's pushed certain forms of education at the expense of trade schools, and when you really look at every other rubric, every other measurable thing around this whole conversation, you can see it's been a failure on your side to present a more persuasive case. And so I've said this to everybody from Ford to Caterpillar to Kimberly Clark, everybody I've been in business with. And look, the good news is, for what it's worth, the tanker is starting to turn around. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this if you're seeing any encouraging signs, green shoots, as they say. But there's been a lot of press. Wall Street Journal just had a big article, Gen Z, the tool belt generation, question mark. And they're looking at a lot of these kids, right, who are making these kinds of choices. Are you seeing that, Nick?
Oh yeah, we had a kid on. I think it was it last week or the week before? Young kid, he was like 16 or 17, and my wife actually stumbled across him on a community board, and he was raising money to go to the Skills USA event. So we got in contact with him. We said whatever you need to raise, we'll donate it. Like whatever you need, and we helped fund him to go. And we were like, we also want you on the podcast. And we talked to him, and he talked a lot about how it's, there is this kind of resurgence. And I think about probably 6-7 years ago, it was, we need to create awareness for the trades, and that was like the campaign: find home building, keep craft alive. Like there's this huge push to like just create awareness, like that, hey, this, guys, this is good, this is good, like stop thinking it's bad. And in Tyler and I's, school days in high school and college, like it wasn't that way, and that was what we were trying to counteract. Mike, I think I told you, but like in high school, I applied to go to my vocational school, and I was so nervous. And I went down to my guidance counselor, and I asked him, does he think I'll get in? And he goes, you? He goes, dude, all the bad kids get in. You're fine.
Yeah.
And I remember like feeling terrible about that. And I guess where I'm going with this is 5-6 years ago, that was the message. We need to create encouragement. We need to get people interested in the trades. But simultaneously, while we were doing that, we were removing every piece of education. One trade was being removed for the vocational school year after year after year. And I remember talking to, we had a kid that worked for us who was in high school. He was on his co-op, and he was from my high school. And I was asking him, I'm like, is that shop still there? And he goes, oh no, they combined those two and now made them one. I'm like, what about this one? He goes, no, those are combined. That one's combined with this. I'm like, they were combining machine shop and metal shop and cabinet making and house carpentry and auto body and auto mechanic. I'm like, they're so different. And
Yeah.
how do you learn that if you're in two totally different aspects of the trade? And fast forward to today, it's like, now we have people in our inbox constantly like, hey, I went into a quote unquote white collar job, which I agree, like white collar, blue collar. Now there's this whole like generation of people that don't have a collar at all that make a ton of money. They don't fall into either group. But hey, I went into this white collar job. I'm just not feeling fulfilled. I want to come work for you. And we have these conversations week after week. It's like, that's fine, but you have no skill set. We're more than like, if we have the capacity, we will teach you. Many of people in our industry are very small, sub 5 people companies, and to put training in place is a huge expense to them.
Mm-hmm.
So now these guys are coming in, and it's like they're going from making 6+ figures a year to then being at a slightly above minimum wage as a floor sweeper, hopefully to become an apprentice, hopefully to become and grow. And now I think in 24, especially at this last builder show, now my view is that now we're in a race to see what we can do faster. Can we create technology that will replace the 4 remaining jobs that are retiring faster than we can train 4 more people? And there's an argument to both sides, and I'm not on either side. I think that there's a case for both.
Sure.
And I think but the at the base and you said that, like, you've been talking about this, and when we last talked about it, you said something that I've always kind of referenced, is that the welder versus like a white collar job or blue collar, it wasn't that we needed one or the other. It was that there was equal respect. And you used the word respect. And I remember that being like something that stuck to me, is like that we've gotten there. We've gotten to this. We've gotten to the place where, trades are respected. I don't think I can't, it's obviously not 100%, but I think in our generation and Gen Z, like, there's this respect and an awareness that these are all equal career paths, but it's how do I do it?
That's great. I mean, look, that's the first step. But again, it's really difficult to measure because it's happening in real time under a lot of different circumstances in a lot of different places, right? I mean, geographically, I can tell you, I was in Oklahoma a couple months ago. In fact, the guy who's on my podcast next week was a complete accident. I ran into him in the middle of Oklahoma. His name is Brent Haken. You'll love him. He is the state director of the CTE program in all of Oklahoma. And I was out there filming this project with Continental Energy. And, you can imagine how many jobs exist in the energy field that require hands-on skilled training. So this year, in the course of doing that campaign, I said, look, is there a way we can kind of incorporate a trade conversation into these materials? And they said, yeah, why not? We'd love to do that. Anyhow, they say you should film in a place called Central Tech. It's in the middle of the state, and they train everything from nursing to truck drivers to just about any any skill you would need on the oil field, or in gas production, anywhere in the country. So I said, let's go there. Guys, it was unbelievable. I've been in a lot of trade schools. Some are better than others for different reasons. This thing is the most no BS, hands-on. We're going to teach you how this works, right? And what's so interesting about this guy, Haken, Brent, is that as I was interviewing him, so first and foremost, he's a farmer. Like, he grew up on like a wheat farm, spent all of his teenage years backbreaking farming work. Then he became a teacher. Then he became a principal. Then he became a supervisor. And now I don't even think he's 40 years old, maybe early 40s, and he's the state director of all CTE. While we're standing there in the lobby talking about all the trouble in the world, and he's explaining why his school is different, the school buses start showing up. 1, 2, 5, 10, 12, 17, all packed with kids. This is 2 in the afternoon, I guess. So all over this part of the state, high schools let out, buses fill up, and hundreds of kids descend on this place to learn how to weld and to learn how to steam fit and to take their nursing programs. So it's like, okay, we took shop class out of high school, but in some parts of the country, it's come back on steroids. And this is one of them. This is a place where any kid in any nearby high school, and by nearby I mean like 30 miles, they come here to get trained. And as I'm standing there watching this happen, filming for this other project, as soon as I got finished, I said, hey, man, can we just sit down and talk? I won't keep you more than an hour, but I just want to share this story from you firsthand on my podcast. And of course, he said, yeah. And I said, before we start, let me just ask, why are you saying yes so quickly? And he said, because PR is the most important element of what we're talking about. If we don't challenge the stigma, stereotypes, myths, misperceptions, none of this money, none of this effort, none of it is going to matter. We have to do something that affirmatively shifts the conversation on the topic at the kitchen table, the dining room table, between parents and kids. If we don't, we fail, period.